Good morning and welcome back to day 98 in our 365 days of Bible study. Today, as we continue looking at the early monarchy in the Old Testament, the time between Saul and Solomon, we are looking at the story of David, and we look at the beginning of a scandal as David kills the husband of his lover, Bathsheba. The second book of Samuel, chapter 11, verses 1 to 17. The following spring, after David's military victories, at the time of year when kings normally set off on military campaigns, David remained in Jerusalem while he sent Joab off with his officers and the Israelite army. They defeated the Ammon army and besieged Rabbah city. Meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, late one afternoon, David got up from his siesta and went up on the palace roof for a stroll. Below, he noticed a very beautiful woman taking a bath. He sent a courier to find out about her. She was Bathsheba, Eliam's daughter, Uriah the Hittite's wife. David sent runners to fetch her, and when they brought her to him, he had sex with her. She had just finished her monthly purification after her period. Afterwards, she went home again. Later, she discovered she was pregnant and sent a message to tell David. So David told Joab to send Uriah the Hittite to see him. And when he arrived, he asked him if Joab and the troops were doing well and how the fighting was going, and then sent him home for a rest. David sent a present after him. But instead of going home, he bunked down with the palace guard at the gate. When David heard about it, he asked Uriah why he hadn't gone home, since he'd been away such a long time. Uriah replied, "Israelites and Judeans are together at war, and the Ark of the Covenant is with them. Joab, my commanding officer, and his officers are camped in the field. How could I go home and feast and spend a night with my wife? By everything I hold dear, I swear I just couldn't do it." "Well," David said, "stay here today, and I'll send you back tomorrow." So Uriah stayed overnight in Jerusalem, and David invited him to supper. He gave him too much to drink, but still he wouldn't go home. He slept in a bunk in the guardhouse. The next morning, David sealed a letter to Joab and gave it to Uriah to deliver. It read, "Put Uriah in the front line in the heavy fighting, then back off and let him be killed." So while Joab was laying siege to the city, he put Uriah just where the enemy was strongest. And when soldiers came out of the city to resist Joab's forces, amongst David's officers who fell that day was Uriah. A lot is expected of those in public office. They are expected to be competent in administration, clear-headed in times of crisis, have a heart for the welfare of the needy, be an example of good behaviour to the people. But as we have seen in our own privacy-conscious days, someone will always know what public figures have been up to, and the story will find its way out to the public. Today's story doesn't tell us who exactly knew what David was up to, but I can't see that anyone's life was at all private in those days. Anyway, after Uriah's funeral, Bathsheba moved into the palace and married David, and she gave birth to a son. Now, power is a heady drug, and if you think your power is of divine origin, you can entertain the illusion that anything you think of, you will get away with. It is a temptation that has never gone away. We saw it in varying degrees of severity in what was said about emperors like Nero and Caligula, in monarchs like Richard III, Henry VIII, and Bloody Mary, and in elected leaders like Hitler, Stalin, Putin, Trump, and even Boris. This is why the kings of Israel and Judah needed prophets, why the emperors needed the steadying hand of the military and the Senate, why the monarchs still need parliament, and why the elected tyrants are the worst of all, ruling with little constraint. In our story today, it looks at first as if David has got away with seducing Bathsheba and murdering her husband. The story is there as a warning to later generations that power should not be used for evil purposes, that absolute power is never a good idea, and in the end somehow there will be consequences. Well, tomorrow we see a prophet called Nathan bringing David to book for his evil behavior. See you tomorrow.